Alright, so I'm going to talk to you guys about doing your insulating your steel building the fast and easy way. Is this the correct way by code for the area you live in? You need to look that up yourself. I'm not thinking about code. Where I live, we don't have any issues with cold. Okay, if you live in somewhere where they have issues with cold, let's say it's freezing outside and the inside of your building gets wet, then you might have an issue with mold or something like that that you need to consider. And apparently what I understand about that is, I don't know anything about this, and I'm just kind of throwing this in there because I got so much hate on my last video about this stuff, is that you should have some sort of an air gap between your foam and the wall. So you might want to consider like some sort of a furring strip down here or something like that if you're in that area, and I would look up local codes for that if you're trying to do it to be to keep from the mold. Or if you are not worried about it, maybe you just try it, do a section and try it, and then see if you end up with mold after a year, pull it off and do a section, don't do the whole thing, and just see if it works. So that might be an option for you guys who are doing that. But this stuff here is supposed to, yeah, it says no mold, keeps the bugs out, recyclable. So what does that mean? I have no idea. I am not an expert with the code or in knowing what the areas are. Every area of the United States has different laws to follow. Where I live, there is nothing for mold as far as that goes. We don't have it because we don't have mold issues. So as far as insulation goes, you can put insulation right against anything. I could just put insulation in here, regular insulation, and put drywall over this, and that wouldn't be a problem where I live. But anyway, we're not thinking about code. We're thinking about if you have hot air on the outside and you're trying to keep your building inside the building from getting too hot. This is something that I do, and it works. Okay, so this is not to do it exactly the right way. It's something that you can do that I've done that works. Okay, that's all we're looking at. And what I've got here is this foam from Home Depot. They sell this at Home Depot. We put it on behind the. We're going to go ahead and cut this to fit here. Then we're going to put it on the wall with silicone. So that's just, we're going to put dots of silicone all over the wall, which would give you, if you were thinking about an air gap, that would probably give you about that much air gap because of the silicone, the thickness of that. So, and being that this is corrugated, I don't know if that meets your air gap requirements. I don't know. But here, there's no problem with that. So what I'm going to do is put this on the walls, and we've tested this. It does work. And we're going to put this on the walls, and we're going to do this whole shop area here that has plenty of air, so it doesn't get. We're not having an issue, like I said, with cold at all, and it's open. But what happens is the walls in here get so hot that reflection is actually hotter in here than it is outside in the shade. So we want to correct that. So we're going to go ahead and put this on here. Let you guys take a look. We'll put the camera up here and let you watch. This is what we ended up with. Some people will say that you should have the foil going to the inside of the building. In my experience with doing building where I live, and some places you guys live different, if you're trying to keep the heat in, then maybe you'd want the foil to the inside. My issue is that the heat needs to stay to the outside. So where we live, we have something called radiant barrier that you have to put on. What you do is you put on OSB when you build a normal building, and this is like on a steel building, so this has got a totally different thing. This is not there's no code on this or anything. This is just doing something that works. We've done this before. I did this. My friend does this, has a shed that he uses as an office, and he actually has the 2-inch version of the same thing, one of those little metal sheds, and he has a little air conditioner in there, and it actually stays cool. So, but if you have an issue with heat, again, this could get moisture on it. Apparently what they say is there should be an air gap. I don't know anything about this stuff, but you know, the air gap between, and then the radiant barrier, I believe, should be the same way it is, because radiant barrier is to keep the heat out. So but if you're really trying to make yours go the other way, you might want to put the foil to the inside, because it'll actually, the heat will reflect and stay inside. We're trying to keep the heat out, and in the summer you might have a hot issue if you do that too, so just so you know. But that's what we're doing. All we do is just take dots of silicone. We use this right here. The walls were actually not too hard to do. The ceiling is actually a lot more difficult. We're using silicone, and we found that it really works with double stick tape silicone to hold it in place while you put it up. And you almost need like something like a roller pole or something like that to, or a 2x4 to hold each one up while it's drying, because they want to fall back down. So this is, if you see up here, this is foil tape, and that sticks pretty good to the to hold them in place while the silicone's drying. But what we're going to do now is there's still some loose areas where the silicone's stuck for a little bit and then sort of come back down. And what we're going to do is actually get some of that spray foam, the expanding foam, and put it in some areas. You can't really use that for an adhesive because it doesn't dry fast enough. But once it's in place, if you put some of that and it actually connects to the edges of it, I really think it will hold it in place forever. That's what I'm thinking. But you guys can comment on that. I do notice a huge, this is only the 1/2 inch foam. Okay, this is only the 1/2 inch foam, because these are like $6 or $7 a sheet. The 1 inch or 2 inch is like, up to like $20 a sheet. So just the 1/2 inch foam makes a difference between this wall in the sun right here. If I'm standing on this side of the wall, super hot. It used to be almost as hot when you were on this side of the wall, because the heat would go hit the steel and then it would radiate. Now it feels like you're standing in the shade under a tree. So it's like, I don't know, way cooler just from the 1/2 inch foam. So if you were doing this, you might want to just start, maybe use the 1/2 inch. You might be, it depends on what you're trying to do, how much money you want to spend. The thicker foam might stay in place easier if you wanted to like shove it in place versus trying to glue it. But I don't know. This stuff's pretty flexible. See, it's pretty flexible. So what happens is, it wants to, when you put it in place with it being this far apart, if you put it between studs, I've done that and it works pretty good. I mean, on a 16 on center stud, I have that in my sheds. In this metal building, you have to glue them in place because it's got, these are like 3'6" or something like that on center. So it's like, it's almost 4 feet, or more than 4 feet. It's 4'6" or 5 feet wide. And so it's like, it doesn't quite work the same as far as, this is like in a stud. So and the flexibility of it, it wants to bow outward. It wants to bow like this. It wants to bow outward. When you put it in, then the silicone in the middle doesn't want to stick. So you have to cut them to smaller than size and do it. Now, if you guys see, there's gaps everywhere and all this, I mean, it's really hard to get this up here, okay? I'm just letting you know that when you guys try to do it yourself, you start casing on my work, why don't you do yours first and then tell me how great, put a video up how great you did it yourself, and then I'll go on your channel and write up a whole bunch of hate, right? No, I'm not going to do that. But anyway, I'm just saying, put a video up if you do a better job, and put a link on here. Love to see it. I think everybody would. So anyway, but you can, I just wanted to tell you guys about the huge difference, and we haven't even got the ceiling done yet. And you could actually feel the heat radiate from the ceiling, and then here, even though I've got a 1 foot gap in there, I can feel this part of the shed is a lot cooler than even over there. But we're not going to do that wall because that's constantly in the shade. So we're only going to do this wall and the ceiling. And actually the thing that was irritating this most was actually this wall, because when you walk in, you'd stand 3 to 4 feet away from this wall and it'd be hot, and we're never usually 3 or 4 feet away from the ceiling. So, but we'd still like to make it a little bit cooler if we can. So anyway, that's it. I think I'm going to go ahead and put this up at this point. It's a, I don't know how many percentage, I would say 10 times, 20 times as cool, 30 times as cool as it was. I mean, there's no way to put an amount on it. It's if you want your steel building to be cooler and you're not worried about a mold issue or something like that, or this might be a great thing to do. And if you have dry climate, where you're not going to be worried about between the foam and this getting mold or something. Those are all some of the insulation problems people have. We don't have that in California. So anyway, so you guys that do want to keep that in consideration. Anyway, I'll talk to you in the next video. Please like, share, and subscribe.